Today we're going to be converting points in its algebraic xy form to its new trig r theta form. We're just going to go back and forth from one to the other. If this looks familiar to you, it should be, because we did pretty much the same thing when we worked with vectors. Okay, instead of r in vectors, we actually called it the magnitude, but really it's the same exact concept. So if I gave you x and y, left, right, up, down movements, how do I find the magnitude? I do exactly what I did when I found the magnitude for vectors. I just use the Pythagorean theorem. So in this case, it's going to be the square root of x squared plus y squared. That'll tell you how far from the center you are. And the next thing I have to talk about is the angle or the direction. Just like with vectors, which direction are you staring at? I'm going to use arctangent of y over x. And again, please make sure that you're in the proper quadrant. So again, if you're in quadrant 1, that's the only time your calculator is correct. If you're in quadrants 2 or 3, make sure you add 180. If you're in quadrant 4, make sure you add 360. Okay. And just like with vectors, x is the same thing as cosine in trig. So if I have r and theta, if I want to find x, all I do is I use cosine. Okay, and y is the same thing as sine. So it's just a matter of taking r times cosine of theta, and then y is r times sine of theta. Again, alphabetical. X comes before y, c comes before s. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of examples. If I take a look at these examples right here. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have to recognize what situation I'm in. Okay, so the first one, if I take a look at it, this is in polar form. So my job is to convert it into algebra xy form. Okay, so trig to algebra. So my job is to find out what x is and what y is. So x is nothing more than r times cosine of that negative 150 degrees. Okay, and then y is sine of that negative 150 degrees. Okay, just to let you know, this is the same thing as 210 degrees. Okay, right? If I spin downwards or clockwise 150 degrees, that's the same thing as spinning upwards counterclockwise 210 degrees. So that makes it a little bit easier when you use your unit circle skills. So it's going to be 3 times what is cosine of 210 degrees. That's why you have to know your unit circle very well. Okay, and then sine of 210 degrees, if I did that in my head, that should be 1/2. So my final answers are, the x coordinate is 3 times negative radical 3 over 2. And y is r times sine of 210, which means 3 times negative 1/2, which is negative 3/2. That's it. Now it's in left, right, up, down algebra mode. Same thing here. This is in trig mode. So to find x, it's going to be r times cosine of 225. Y is r times sine of 225. Okay, so it's just a matter of, once again, busting out your unit circle skills. So cosine of 225 is negative radical 2 over 2. And same thing here. Okay, so my x coordinate is, if I reduce, that's going to be just a positive radical 2. If I reduce, same thing, positive radical 2. So radical 2 to the right, radical 2 up will land in the same exact spot as if I spun 225 degrees and walk backwards 2 steps. Take a look at this. This is in algebra mode. So my job is to find r and theta, trig mode. So r is just the Pythagorean theorem. So square root of 3 squared, which is 9, square root of plus negative 7 squared, which is 49, which is what, radical 58. So I found r, which is radical 58, and then the next thing I have to do is find the angle. That's always going to be arctangent of y, which is negative 7 over x. Okay, rise over run, slope. So if I punch that into my calculator, it's going to spit out 66.801 degrees. But this point is in quadrant 4. How do I know that? Basic algebra 1. This is 3 to the right, 4 down. So 7 down. So I am in quadrant 4. So if I'm in quadrant 4, this is not correct. I have to, that's negative. I have to add 360 to that. So here's my r. That hasn't changed, but if I add 360 to that, that's going to give me, hold on a second, 293.199 degrees. Okay. All right, same thing here. This is in algebra mode. I got to convert it into trig mode, which means find r, find theta. R is Pythagorean, so that's 4 plus 16, which is radical 20, which is 2 radical 5. Now all I have to do is find the angle, which is always arctangent. It's a slope of y over x, just like it was in Algebra 1. Change of y over change of x. Punch this into your calculator, and it will give you negative 63.435 in quadrant 2. Okay. All right, so since it's in quadrant 2, I had to add 180 to it. So my final answer is 116.565 degrees. Okay, that's it. Going from algebra to trig and trig back to algebra.